Factors that affect physiologic function during rest. What is the physiologic function at rest? Some people call it the basal energy expenditure, or BEE, while other terms for it include basal metabolic rate, BMR, or even the resting metabolic rate. Even when we do pretty much nothing all day, we are still using calories to maintain the essential bodily functions. The amount varies, but according to the National Academy of Sciences, it averages about 1,200 calories per day. There are many factors that affect the basal energy expenditure, including gender, age, temperature, body size, and the food one consumes. It is interesting also to note that in research studies, variability in the basal energy expenditure is significant, and differences in body weight was only a small part of it. The amount of fat-free body mass, along with actual energy expenditure, accounted for almost 80% of variability. This explains why women and men have different resting metabolisms, as women usually have a greater percentage of body fat. Finally, it has been postulated that it actually may be also determined by genetics. Let's look more deeply into other factors. There is a 2% decline in the basal energy expenditure for each decade of life. In fact, older adults over the age of 70 have huge decline in basal energy expenditure compared to young adults, as much as 25%. Many believe, though, that age is less a factor than the increase in body fat and decrease in fat-free mass, and that with constant exercise, these numbers could actually improve dramatically. Endurance and resistance activities have been shown to actually offset the decline that seems to occur with aging. The environment also affects the basal energy expenditure. For example, people who live in tropical climates can have much higher, between 5% and 20%, resting metabolism than people who live in colder climates, even when adjusting for other factors. Interestingly, extreme cold can also affect resting metabolisms due to shivering that generates heat to maintain homeostasis. Regarding temperature, research has shown that an increase in only 1 degree Celsius of body temperature is associated with up to 13% increasing in resting metabolism. Similarities between the factors affecting physiologic function during exercise versus at rest. There are many similarities between the factors affecting physiological function during exercise versus at rest. At rest, calories are consumed by the body just to maintain bodily functions, and the rate that these calories are used are affected by body's composition, age, environmental temperature, and the food that the person has consumed. It also makes sense to think that hydration plays a role in how well the blood can flow through the body, whether the body is resting or exercising. Actually, it is likely that all factors that affect resting bodies also affect exercising bodies. The difference lies in degrees. Heat production resulting from oxygen uptake affects physiologic function during exercise. Any discussion on heat production in the body must start with the hypothalamus, which is a region at the base of the brain near the pituitary gland below the thalamus. It coordinates the activity of the pituitary and the autonomic nervous system. It is responsible for many things, such as the release of hormones, maintaining daily physiology, controlling appetite, and regulating emotions and sexual behavior. The reason it is part of this discussion, though, is that it is responsible for regulating body temperature. Body temperature, as most think of it, is actually a mathematical average of both skin temperature, which is usually the lower, and internal core body temperature, which is usually the highest. The hypothalamus, then, is basically the body's thermostat. Hormones are secreted, and nerve receptors continually send messages to the hypothalamus, allowing the body to remain at a fairly constant temperature of about 97 and 99 degrees Fahrenheit. This constant temperature of about between 97 and 99 Fahrenheit, this maintains homeostasis, which can be described as a steady state of internal body conditions. The importance of this thermal regulation cannot be understood. The body cannot tolerate large changes in the body temperature. In fact, it can survive a drop of 10 degrees Fahrenheit, but only an increase of 9 degrees Fahrenheit. Any more, and death can result. There are many factors that contribute to excess body heat production, including basal metabolic rate and hormonal activity, the thermic effect of different food consumptions, postural changes, and the environment and especially muscular activity. What happens to the physiologic function as heat production increases through exercise? When a person exercises, there is an increase in oxygen demand by the tissues. The additional oxygen is needed to satisfy the increased ATP hydrolysis to prevent the accumulation of products of the increased metabolism, such as lactate. The energy system moves from anaerobic to aerobic, and the muscles combine oxygen with ATP. As with any reaction, heat energy is created. In one study, it was interesting to note that in the initial stage of dynamic exercise, there is a fall in skin surface temperature, one that seemed to be independent of climate and of bodily sweat secretions. In fact, when two subjects exercised at the same intensity but at different environmental temperatures, the decrease in skin temperature was actually identical. When body temperatures elevates, there is an extra blood flow to the skin and sweating occurs, which allows evaporation to help control internal temperature of the body. This blood flow has to come from somewhere, so is diverted from other organs such as the kidney or liver. This extra heat is also released as respiration after being picked up by the circulatory system. In addition, there is a decreased muscle tone and voluntary activity, along with decreased thyroxine and epinephrine secretion. What about the environment changes? That also affects heat production and creates physiological changes, especially during exercise. Recall that the body strives for thermal regulation. During muscular exercise, the core temperature increases rapidly at first, then continues increasing more slowly until the heat loss equals heat production, producing a steady state. When a person exercises in the cold weather, the body generates extra heat by the contraction of the skeletal muscles, also called shivering. Heat loss is prevented through vasoconstriction. On the other hand, when exercise in the heat, the body promotes heat dissipation by increasing vasodilation.